Good afternoon and welcome to the Medford and Jackson County's virtual forum, Medford and Jackson County Chambers virtual forum. This webinar is sponsored by Rogue Credit Union and is brought to you by our season sponsor, the Cow Creek Band of Umpqua Tribe of Indians. My name is Gene Pelham and I'm President and CEO of Rogue Credit Union, and I'll be introducing today's program featuring our keynote speaker, Tom Donahue, CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. To moderate the questions for our speaker and close out today's program, we'll have the one and only Brad Hicks, President and CEO of the Medford Jackson County Chamber. And thank you all for being here today. I'd just like to take this opportunity to thank all of the forum sponsors that you saw in the slideshow just a moment who helped put these programs on for us. Thank you for your continued support. As we hear today, your support of the Chamber's mission has never been more important. The Chamber is grateful to bring everyone together on matters that are important to our business community, and we appreciate you participating today. While we are participating in this program virtually for now, we are all looking forward to coming together in person again when state policies allow us to do so. If you attended one of these virtual forums before, you already know all the drill and the details, and what it will look like today. But for those of you who are new, I'd like to explain a few things for our viewers. As you've noticed, you're not on the screen and you do not have video or microphone capabilities. Some of you really appreciate that. You're just simply an attendee. So my perspective is Bermuda shorts and flip-flops are perfect attire for your non-video participation today. There is a Q&A feature on this webinar. Please find at the bottom of your screen an icon with Q&A on it, and you will be able to type in your questions for our panelists. We'll be reading through your questions and asking a few during the presentation. So once again, thank you all for joining us today. And Rogue Credit Union is incredibly proud to support the Chamber through this forum sponsorship. A huge shout out to the Rogue staff that have joined us today. I was really excited, Brad, when I found out that we were going to have a full table, and then if we only had tables. So soon we'll have tables again. Is that right? I was recently interviewed by a credit union publication on what are the difficulties of running a credit union during a pandemic. And I shared with them, I can only imagine what it would be like to just have one obstacle like a pandemic to facing us today. I know each of you have your challenges, and here at Rogue, we're in the midst of a technology upgrade, a merger, relief payments, and now the wildfire. For that, you're all my heroes for showing up every day to do and serve those that need us most right now. I want to personally thank everyone here on the call today because of your dedication and commitment to our community. I also want to thank you for your support of our Wildfire Relief Fund. Just a couple days after the Alameda and other fires destroyed much of Talent and Phoenix and parts of numerous communities in our region, the Rogue team said we had to do something. So we called our foundation into action to collect funds for wildfire relief. We said we'd match $50,000 with just the huge hope that we would be able to gather $100,000 in donations to help our community. But within just a couple of days, we had over $150,000 in donations. So we said, well, if a little bit's good, let's try a little bit more. So we added another 50,000 to it. And within 2 weeks, our community, our region, our country, and actually folks around the world joined in to support us to raise over $1 million for wildfire relief in Southern Oregon. However, we received over $2 million in grant requests already, and so there's still a lot of work needed to be done, but we've put $1 million of those funds to work already. And we have many of you that are participating today to thank for that, for our ability to provide fast relief to the community, because as business leaders, it's mere words are not enough to thank you for all you're doing to stand up for our community today. I know you've committed your personal and your business resources to be part of the solution. And for that, I'm grateful to join with each of you to be part of the solution. Okay, we are incredibly fortunate today to have our keynote speaker, Tom Donahue, join us. Had a great conversation before the event. I'm really looking forward to what Tom has to share with us today. And if there is a silver lining in virtual meetings, it's the fact that we're able to attract folks like Tom to join us and share his wisdom and his insight and his perspectives with us. It just probably wouldn't happen if we didn't have this forum to do it with. Mr. Donahue's role as the Chamber of Commerce CEO gives him really one of the best seats in the House to see how our world has changed this year. He's seen the challenges we all face firsthand, but he's also witnessed unparalleled business agility, innovation, and empathy. Mr. Donahue is here to share with you today what we've done and what we can do to help our economy and our country recover. From 1997 to 2019, Tom Donahue served as the Chamber President and CEO, the first person to hold both titles concurrently in the organization's history. During his tenure, Donahue has built the Chamber into a lobbying and political powerhouse with expanded influence across the globe. Donahue has led efforts to expand trade and domestic energy production, rebuild America's infrastructure, protect intellectual property, revitalize capital markets, and advocate for legal, tax, and educational entitlement reform. Under Donahue's leadership, the Chamber has emerged as a major political force in races for the Senate and the House of Representatives. He's a recipient of the Horatio Alger Award and the Boy Scouts of America National Capital Area Council's Lifetime Achievement Award. This part is really cool to me when I read this. He holds the highest civilian honor from both Germany and South Korea, as well as the Order of the Crown Commander Class presented by the Crown Prince of Belgium. So not only do we have a business leader, but we've got an accomplished individual that is a worldwide traveler and has worldwide impact also. So thank you for being here today, Tom. We're honored to have you. And so without further ado, today's keynote, Mr. Tom Donahue and Chamber President and CEO, Brad Hicks.
Me?
I'll let you go first, Tom.
Okay, that'll be great, Brad. And thank you, Gene, for the introduction. You get to be my age, those introductions are sounding more and more like an obituary. And I'm trying to keep up the energy so that I can stay just a little ahead of that reality. I want to thank you all for joining the Chamber's meeting today at your 101st annual forum. 101 years ago, our country was in the midst of another once in a generation pandemic, the Spanish flu. This year, we're facing a similar challenge in overcoming the virus that we've all put a number on. I don't know how they got to 19, but I hope they get over it in a big hurry. But that's not the only crisis in front of us. Our nation is facing a historic confluence of events right now. We've got the virus, which in itself is a pandemic, and the economic recovery, which is not evenly spread out for all Americans, and the wildfires and social unrest that are taking place at different places around the country. I know for business in Medford, the past few months have got to have been very difficult. The pandemic forced many of the businesses to alter their operations and adapt to new ways of life. Then when we hoped things would get better, devastating fires have affected your lives and the citizens of your community and wreaked havoc on businesses and communities. Our thoughts are with everybody there. We spend a lot of time trying to help communities get over these kinds of difficulties by being good partners and chambers of commerce all over this country take a major lead in doing that. overcoming the challenges you all face and the challenges business across the country face will require the solutions, the innovation, and the collaboration of a united business community. And I just heard that with the report on how you moved very, very quickly to gather resources for the first help that's got to be on the scene long before insurances pay, long before government gets there to help. It's because of organizations like yours and the strong business partnerships across the country that our nation will emerge from this crisis a lot stronger. So the Chamber is honored to work with you as we seek to help business get back on their feet and doing what they do best, creating economic opportunity and lifting our economy and our country with it. So I look forward to our conversation today and about what's going on in Washington. And sometimes I wonder, damned if I know, because it's percolating. And I'm going to give you my best go. And then we'll have an opportunity, if anybody wants, to come back and challenge me or add to what I've had to say through your own experience. And Brad, it's all your deal and I'm ready to go at it.
Well, Tom, thank you so much. And thanks for being flexible and doing this fireside chat style. I think we probably all read the recent article in Forbes from Bill Arruda, who said we've all got to up our Zoom games a little bit. So I really appreciate your flexibility and taking Q&A. I think that's kind of a fun way to do it. A couple of quick things before we get started. Of course, you and I have worked on a lot of things together over the years and been friends, and it's easy to forget to say things like this, but I just want to say what a great honor it is to have you with us today, and how much you have meant, your career at the Chamber has meant to local chambers in the Federation. We have modeled our Chamber's operations after all the things you've done at the U.S. Chamber, and quite frankly, I credit a lot of the success that we've had at the Medford-Jackson County Chamber to the work that you've started at the top. So thank you is probably not enough, but thank you very much. And then to your point about the wildfires and your care and concern, a lot of people don't know this, but under your watch, the U.S. Chamber created the help desk, and it's helped local chambers help their communities all around our country, whether it's floods, tornadoes, hurricanes, now wildfires. And Inez Pierce, who runs that for the U.S. Chamber, is a fantastic resource. We've taken full advantage of it, and we will continue to do so. But those aren't just words. The U.S. Chamber has really provided a tool for us to use, and that's greatly appreciated. So with no further delays, we're going to get to some questions here, Tom, and I'll try to keep you on your feet. So question number one, the U.S. Chamber represents such a broad swath of American industry. What is the state of our economy right now today from the Chamber's vantage point?
Well, you know, when we got involved in the pandemic, when we had all of the immediate shutdown of activity, but 37% of the people across the nation never went home, never took their computers and went home because they were critical to what was going on. People in the public service, people in the private companies. You know, we had to keep the lights on, we had to keep the TV going, we had to keep our computers rolling, we had to feed people, we had to, all the stuff that had to be done in hospitals. So about 37% of the people kept working, some of them at home, and then more have come back. We hope, Brad, to get a V-shaped recovery. We come down in the hole, we shoot out the other side. And what we have gotten instead is a K. On one side it goes up, and the other side it goes down. Now, what's gone up? I mean, so many very, very important industries. But if you look for places where it's gone down in the other direction, think of this line of industries. Commercial airlines, hotels, restaurants, and event space, meaning conventions and business meetings and all of that. And those issues in their own, along if you throw in some recreation issues and sports from high schools right through professional sports, you've got, you know, millions and millions of people who were out of jobs. They're coming back a few at a time. Schools are starting to do some things, and we're very, very hopeful for the future. Others, other things that are really challenging us are the smallest companies. And who needs them more than anybody else are the biggest companies. Because what most people don't understand is that we have millions and millions of subcontractors to bigger companies. And we're working with bigger guys and gals to help the smaller companies. And we have been a major source of contact with our government as we try and be helpful.
So some of these I might know the answers to, but the U.S. Chambers had some pretty active task forces working on these issues, and I've participated in a couple. What, in your opinion, what should lawmakers be doing for businesses and industries that have been hit the hardest and will, to your last point, likely take longer than others to recover?
Well, Brad, I think before we answer that specific question, we all have to get together and say, leaving aside Democrats, Republicans, but the government of the United States has responded as it should have in a vigorous way. Billions, oh yeah, but trillions and trillions of dollars. And does it all go to the very right place? Probably not. This is emergency moving, putting cash on the table so people can eat. And again, the private sector did much of that as well. Putting cash on the table so people could keep their houses, and putting cash on the table so that children and all the way through the oldest of our population would be protected. Now we're to the point in the middle of a big national election, and I might say an election's a little different than other ones we've seen.
Just a little.
We're looking at the fourth effort to help. Now, Nancy Pelosi, who is the Speaker of the House, and the Secretary of the Treasury, Mnuchin, are down to their last 2 days of negotiating. And she says, if we don't do it by tomorrow night, then we're not doing it until after the election. Well, maybe, but probably because of the way things have to be voted and so on. But it's not very long to the election. I think we're late in doing this. There's another thing that the chamber is doing that's hooked right on to this. And that is, we have a deal that if you want to get the fourth issue, and we're helping to get it, we're going to do something else. We've got Democrats and Republicans alike saying that we're going to put a block in the way of lawsuits, suing hospitals and doctors and nursing homes and banks and restaurants and manufacturers and everybody that you could go to and find something they did wrong.
Mm-hmm.
I'm looking for people that find something folks did right. And we've got a chance here to put a 5-year block on no lawsuits on things caused by the pandemic, unless there was absolute fraud involved. Now, a lot of people don't like that idea. There's been, I would say there's probably been 1 million lawsuits filed already, so you can figure out what it would look like in every community across this country. If we don't get it now, we'll sure as hell get it as the lawsuits start piling in.
Well, Tom, that is, in my opinion, one of the most important things that the chamber could be working on. And I know how much work you and the team at the U.S. Chamber have been leaning into on that front, and I appreciate it. So speaking of about that, being out in front of the need for liability protections as phase 4. Any other thoughts you can share about that? Because a lot of folks may not know exactly what's going on around that. Maybe you could just dive into that a little bit more.
Well, by way of background, the Chamber has two major organizations that deal with legal matters. The first is an Institute for Legal Reform. And what we're trying to do is basically force the states in the voices of their citizens to change the rules on how class action lawsuits are used in a way that basically lets people take away from companies and organizations their resources, put most of it in their pockets, and then pretend to send a few dollars to those that they pretended to represent. And we've gotten 33 states, I think, to change the law. We've also gotten in that organization into the election for state Supreme Court and state attorneys general. They used to all be appointed with the encouragement and the influence of class action lawyers. We're doing much better. And there are still 10 cesspool districts in this country where they take those lawsuits, and the Chamber of Commerce of the United States owns a newspaper in every one of those towns. We're having a hell of a time. Our other organization is an actual law firm. It's a public interest law firm in which I am the president, or CEO too, I think. And we work really, really hard to make sure that the cases we get, particularly constitutional cases that go to the higher courts, are supporting the American business community. And our success record really upsets those other guys. And we're just going to keep it up.
I like it. It is fun. Those are my favorite headlines, by the way. So, I know there are a lot of misperceptions that come to Washington, D.C. And one of them that has particularly bothered me for a long time is this perception that the U.S. Chamber only represents the largest of companies. And yet you and I know, just like local chambers, the U.S. Chamber represents thousands of small businesses and has a heart for what small businesses are going through. What are some specific things that the U.S. Chamber has been doing to help small businesses during this pandemic?
Well, first of all, depending on how you count a small business, whether it's one person or a group of persons, you need to know that there's millions and millions of them. If you count every individual, guy with a truck or somebody with a stand, you get up in 20 million small businesses. Second thing to know is that so many small businesses are dependent for their work on big businesses. If you took a company like Boeing or Caterpillar, manufacturers of products, inventors of products, distributors of products that everybody needs to make the society run, you're probably, just with those two companies, you're probably talking about 40,000 subs and subs of subs. That gets to be a lot of companies. The Chamber has 400,000 small business members, and then we have another maybe 100,000 of companies that sort of get a little bigger and a little bigger, and then the very biggest, and even companies from around the world who do business in the United States. What we've really done in this issue on behalf of these small businesses and large businesses. When the PPP liquidity for small and medium-sized companies came, we were there helping them write it, pressing the Congress on what to do that was critical. And by the way, helping them. We were founded 108 years ago to help the American business community and to help our government. We help our government in two ways. We help them by getting in there and helping, and then we help them by lobbying them and suing them to straighten them out with what the people really need. We've worked also with the SBA and the Treasury to ensure that businesses could get those resources they needed quickly. And we've also gotten into the Main Street lending business, which is done for the larger, medium-sized and larger companies. So we follow this. We know these people, and we're now on the stage 4, as we just discussed, because there are, remember, these guys are doing great. The fellas down here and the ladies down here are not doing so well. So we need to get money short-term for the right place, for the right people, and we're working very hard on it.
Well, Tom, I appreciate that. And I appreciate you pointing out those two principles that the U.S. Chamber was founded on and local chambers as well. It's easy to forget that second one, for some of our folks locally who forget that it's good business. It's good for our economy to help our government serve us well. And it's an important role. We all get criticized at the local level, and I know you do too, when we try to do that. But it's critically important, and we're all better off when our government serves us as well as possible. I'm hoping you'll sign a note or give me a hall pass, because you and I are both missing Neil Bradley and Sarah Armstrong's weekly call on this subject to keep us up to speed. But every day, for at least from my perspective, the news cycle on the status of phase 4 seems to change. You spoke to it briefly. What are the realistic expectations of getting something done, whether it's before everybody goes home for elections or shortly thereafter?
My view, and I think my colleagues would support this as well as others, whether it's right before or right after, or shortly thereafter, we will have another cycle. There is no way to avoid it. And one of the reasons is we're going through an increase of the pandemic numbers. Fortunately, deaths are way down compared to what they used to be. And hospitals still have some room. But it is very clear that we're gonna get vaccines. We're starting to get therapeutics that will help treat the disease. People, they're doing much better in hospitals because of all the things the great doctors and scientists learned. And by the way, when we started, we haven't had a pandemic like this in 100 years. But we have great emergency rooms and critical care people, and they learn so fast from one another and from people all over the world that we're doing much better. I can tell you that there's no way that the Congress of the United States is going to be able to duck doing, and might come in 2 phases, might come in 2 buckets, but they're going to have to do it. It's a sure deal, because the American people need it, and we're taking a lot of risk. We're spending a lot of money. Our deficits are going up. But if you ever went back and studied what a depression looks like for a long period of time, we've already put tons of people back to work. We're already building up the economy. We're already seeing economic growth in places. But if we don't keep the gas running, the car's going out of business.
Right. So with all that, what policymakers can do, the position that we're in. We've got, I think we've got an election right around the corner, and there's a lot
No
of,
kidding.
I, I know that's probably news to you back there, but, you know, in Oregon, we've been a vote by mail state for a long time, but there's a lot of discussion around vote by mail and election results. What are your expectations for election night?
All right,
How's that put you on the spot?
no, I'm going to give you, some facts that we know what's going on and some things we almost are sure going to happen. But I will tell you for sure, and every American ought to know this, after we go through all the machinations, and there will be some, we will have an election, and we will have some people reelected and some people elected. And we've got to do everything we can as citizens to support that process. Now, the first thing that I can tell you, I just had a report that in the early voting, there's unbelievable increases in the number of people that we would have had voting like this in recent elections, national elections. Now, that could be for a lot of reasons. It could be because the president's party have been pushing to get everybody to get to the polls at the same time early. At the same time, others are choosing or must, because of health and other reasons, vote by mail. Now, I want to show you something that happens here. In many of the vote by mail states, they're not allowed to open the mail until election day. 12 of the major states that happens, and then another probably 20 or 18 states have other restrictions. So the one thing we know, we're not going to know, we might, if it's a real blowout one way or the other, you'd have a pretty good guess, but you're not going to know who's elected right away. So let's put it this way. Suppose the president's party had lots of people walking into the polls in these long lines, and they ended election night or the next day quite a bit ahead. Well, the other party is doing a lot of direct mail, the mail-ins. 2 weeks later, 3 weeks later, they could show up and say, hey, guys, our party, we win. Not with their numbers, but the numbers counted by our government. It's going to be pretty interesting. There are already lawyers all over the place suing people on, they took away the voting boxes, or they did this, or they did that. It's going to be a bit of a circus, but it is going to be an election that will be respected and will, prove that this country is very interested in their government, because we're going to have more people at church than we get most of the time. Don't ask me who's going to win. I will tell you what we're doing. What the chamber is doing, is working very, very hard on investing money, time, resources, and brains with our whole business community. We don't do presidential stuff, but we're trying really hard to keep the Senate, because that gives a balance. When you get the House, the Senate, the presidency, all the regulators, and everybody else from the same party, it's boring, and it's usually expensive. So we're working hard on keeping the Senate.
Hey, you're talking our language out here in Oregon. We understand what that's like when you can run the table.
Well, you're a guy, you're a good, you running the table is, we'll see.
Yeah. So you mentioned this, Tom, a minute ago, and the U.S. Chamber doesn't play in presidential races, but does as much as anybody literally in the country with regard to congressional races. what are the chambers and your expectations for the House or the Senate?
Well, the House, I guess they were separated by about 17 or 19 votes. I don't think, I don't think it will change. It might get closer. But most of the time you get some clue from the people that are out, talking to their fellow citizens about who they're going to vote for. What are the polls saying? People are getting to be experts at lying to pollsters. One of the things that made polling so much more difficult, many of our citizens don't have a phone in their home. They have the phone in their pocket. And that's made it a totally different issue. And those of us that have phones at home, we get all kinds of people calling us up with all kinds of crazy stuff. So we're inclined to, pick it up and hang it up. But if it's not Granny, we'll hang it up, But the reality is that we really don't know what's going to happen here. I would say it's going to be very close in the Senate. Now I'm going to add another issue. In Georgia, there are 2 Senate races in Georgia. And that's because there was a senator that left and then was replaced by the governor. And then you have an election in the next available election. So we got 2 senators in the same state. In Georgia, the rule says if you don't get 50% or more of the vote, then you have to go into a runoff in January. Both of them, in my opinion, could well go into a runoff. And that could mean you won't know who's running the Senate till maybe the end of January.
Of course, some people wonder who's running the Senate now, right?
Well, I'm working hard to get the Senate to do stage 4, so I'll not say anything about that.
Yeah, you don't have to respond.
There are a lot of really good people in the Senate and in the House. It's very unfortunate that people, begin their political discussions by saying, well, those people aren't any good. Well, you sent them. What I tell them, you sent them here. What the hell are you giving me all that trouble for? Right. And the bottom line is it's really tough to be a member of the Congress. And it's almost impossible to be in the House. You get elected to the House. You're paid what looks like a lot of money, but you pay federal and state taxes. You come back there. Most people can't afford to buy another house in Washington or even rent another house. And so they share rooms with other congressmen. Some people sleep in their office at not in but from work. And they now the rules on who can buy them lunch and what they can do if, in the House and the Senate and the White House, their set of rules probably got 300 pages to them. And it says, well, if you go to this kind of thing, you can only eat with your fingers. Now, if you go to the other place, you can have a small, and you can't sit down for dinner unless it's for a large group of people. Give me a break. I have a lot of respect for the members of the House and the Senate, and I deal with them. I work with them. My team works with them all the time, and sometimes we fight with them. Never physically, mind you, like was years and years ago. What we do is it's a political debate.
Right. And you guys are exceptionally good at it. So regardless of what happens, right? We don't know. It could take some time. It's strange. It's confusing, but at the end of the day, there will still be those priorities that are necessary to the business community, to the U.S. Chamber. Will the U.S. Chamber's priorities change depending on which party wins control of the White House in November?
That's a very good question. I want you to think about this. We drive what our priorities are to create jobs to make successful companies, to provide good health care, to take care of people's retirements, and I could go on and on. Now, the order in which the priorities are dealt with are often dictated by when the sitting party in both the House, in the Senate, and in the White House all sort of set their own, pardon me, their agenda. So if we say our first priority is infrastructure, and boy, no, we got to do that. And then the other guys, the new people in or the existing people in say, okay, now we want to talk about tax cuts or tax increases. We're not going to talk about infrastructure today. We get tomorrow to that. We've got to respond to the tax thing right away. And by the way, we, the business community, are part of the process of pushing for things we need to do or things we need not to do. And we will do that based on the agenda that the institutions provide us and based on the agenda that we're going to try and provide them and based on the agendas that are provided from people of all other walks of life, unions, the medical community, education, colleges and universities, trade. We follow 327 issues. Figure that out. That's why we have people.
Yeah, well, that and sometimes I'm sure that doesn't feel like enough people to follow all those issues. I mean,
well, you know why it does? You told us a few minutes ago about you sitting on those important task forces. We rally people that run small businesses, medium-sized businesses, and large businesses, for they and their employees and to come to the aid of their country and of the business community. And it is in a multiple that is unbelievable. The resources that we can bring to bear on a single subject or on a group of subjects. And by the way, one of the critical issues that makes the chamber, two things make us really strong. Number one, we don't suffer from the problem that we can only do one thing at a time. We can do 25 things at the same time. Very hard because of the way we're organized and because of the way we staff, we can. And the second thing, we do study, we do research, we do all that, but you know what we do? We do stuff. When the thing needs to get done, we just go do it. We'll figure it out we'll get dressed on the way to the prom if we have to. We're going to do it now.
Well, in this age where we're all building the plane while we're flying it, that comes in handy.
You just froze up a little bit better in 1 minute.
About so it's easy to forget our other things on Washington, D.C. Now, we've got an amazing job at the U.S. What are the chamber's dates on the nomination of?
Okay, I know what your question is when you say the nomination, and why they loosen up your side of it, I'll answer it. She's an extraordinary judge with a rich background and what appears to be a wonderful family. Unfortunately, we spend a lot of time in the process, as we should. The right thing to do is make sure you have a good judge. The wrong thing to do is to make it a major part of the political battles between two parties and treat people as if they were, criminals in some of the hearings. I was positively impressed that this worked fairly well. I understand the arguments. I respect the arguments, and I think it was done a little better this time. My view is three things. She will be confirmed shortly. We have studied carefully her background. We have endorsed her, and we believe that she will be a good justice of the Supreme Court for a long time. Well, looks like we've got a problem here.
I'm going to jump in real quickly here. While Brad's getting back in, it seems that his video seemed to cut out a bit. So until he gets back in, I'm going to go ahead and move on to your next question here.
Good.
So it looks like we are now discussing, let me get to it. Oh,
He's back. He's back.
back.
I figured you could talk quite a while on that one.
Yeah, I did. I said we're going to support her big time. Listen,
That's
you know, you got to pay your rent, man. They turn it off.
exactly. Yeah, we got to pay the Wi-Fi bill.
Hey,
Well, all right. Well, let's move on to the next question. I got the long and the short of it.
Right.
So let's think about all of your members, all of our members, some of whom are the same, and thousands or millions of businesses around this country. So thinking about those businesses and their ability to navigate the pandemic, I know because I've participated in some of them, they've been fantastic. The Chamber's been hearing from a number of experts on the development and the distribution of a vaccine. So based on what you've been hearing, when, and I know this is a tough question to answer, but when should we expect things to start going back to normal?
this weekend I was with a couple. The gentleman is one of the global experts on cancer and infectious disease. And so I'm sort of up to date a little. And the first part of the answer, you're not going to like. It's going to take a while. We'll get vaccines fairly soon. I mean, it's not a matter of one vaccine. There are probably, there's one group of 8 companies and organizations. And so there's maybe 15 groups working on vaccines. Before we get the vaccines, we believe we'll get more therapeutics, which if you get the disease, will have something additional to use to protect your health. So let's say we get a vaccine, and let's think of the stages. Every vaccine has to go through 3 stages of testing, and they're doing it quickly, but if you don't do it, you can't be sure it works. But when we get a vaccine, and this is very interesting, let's say we have one, I don't know, January 1st. Well, then you have to figure out how to distribute it. You know, a vaccine is a living organism. And these vaccines have to be transported and administered from glass receptacles, you know, a bottle or a syringe that's made with deep shore sand along the fine sand along the shore, and hard to get. They've been making, you'll want to be happy about this. Bill Gates in the United States and the head or in London of a 200-year-old trust brought together people months ago. They've been making these issues. They've been building factories. They're ready to go. We have lots of the fine pharmaceutical companies around the world working on this. And in addition, small innovative research companies, and we're going to get it. So now we've got the vials. Take fortune to get those. Now we put that together. Now, you know what? To transport it, you got to freeze it and keep it frozen. So you got to take it in from the factories to wherever you can drive them to, or put them on planes that can do that and where you fly them to. And much of this is being done in worldwide cooperation. Even people we seem to have some difficulty now. The Chinese have been helpful, you know, and if you look at the great pharmaceutical companies, they're located all around the world. And we're working on that. And then we're going to have to get to, you know, around time, billions of people. Billions.
Yeah.
And I mean, just look at, we have 340 million people in the United States. And, you know, China's got 400 million. India has the same number. And then think of and the only way to get rid of this disease is to go kill it everywhere. So if we said, well, we're just gonna, you know, do it here, all the rest of, well, first of all, we may not win. We may not have the top vaccine, but we're gonna do it collaboratively, and it's gonna take, let's say by the middle of next year, and the first people to get vaccines will be the people in most need. And by the way, you have a lot of people that don't want a vaccine until they're sure it works. So it's going to be a period of time. But when there are three things we can do to make things happen sooner. If we could get all of our fellow citizens, or a lot of them, in the United States to wear a mask when they're out and about, to keep a distance. You and I are distancing here, but you know, we could be distancing if we were together. I got mine in my pocket, and you know, wash your hands all the time, you know, many times a day. If everybody did that in the United States, all of a sudden those numbers would drop like a rock over about the 2-month period of time. Now that'd free up a lot of hospital space. That'd take away the real day-to-day crisis, but we still have to go out, get the vaccine, make sure we've got the therapeutics, figure out how we're going to get people back to work as quickly as we can. And we're not going to be able to wait until next year, the end of next year, to get more people back to work. There are ways to do it. And we're going to work on it. Remember, I talked about the airplanes and the traveling and everything?
Yeah.
That means you got to get them all in the system, all around the country, and it's going to take time. And the other thought is, I don't think it'll be 100 years until we get the next pandemic. So we should be better prepared whenever we get another one. And by the way, people say, why are we now getting pandemics? Well, one of the major sources of moving pandemics around are bats, which are very resilient and but many of the bats were confined to forests and areas that had not been opened up. And now it's more open. And so you got more transmitting. And I've told you just about everything I know.
Well, and I appreciate that. That's one of the things I love about you, Tom, is that even if it's not the best news, you're always going to tell us what we need to know. And you have so many resources at your fingertips that it's usually a heck of a lot more, certainly, than I know. You touched on a few things, and this will be my last question. Then we'll go to some audience questions and let you get back to your busy day. But you know, people call you all the time. People call me all the time, and they want to know what the chamber can do to help. But at some point, and Gene talked about this before we got on, and at the top of the program, the private sector is always so great at responding and responding early and first and graciously and generously. What else can the community do to help?
First of all, you're 100% right. The great innovation in this society, even things that government is sponsoring, like national defense and healthcare and that, but the great innovations come out of the private sector. We have extraordinary people, extraordinary investors, and we are lucky to have the freedom to run privately owned and publicly owned companies. And when you stop and say, what could your company, large or small, do? Well, just think about it. First of all, you could get your folks to wear masks, to keep a decent distance. It doesn't mean you can't go up and pat somebody on the shoulder. It means generally when you're going to be together, you have to back away and keep washing hands. The second thing you can do is assure people that these things are going in the right direction, that their government and their private sector and their scientific sector are people that are doing the best they can. And remember about science. Science, if you've got 100 scientists in the room, you've got 99 views on stuff. But they are trained to look for the next fact and the next way to move forward. And look how well we have done on that with this pandemic. And we need to be supportive. We need to be positive, and we need to do everything we can to not fight with our communities, but help them. Not to blame people for what's going on, but ask the fundamental question: what am I doing with my employees, with my company, with my resources, with my smart folks? What am I doing to cooperate and to help and pitch in on this? And what has always made America great is, and Churchill used to say it better than anybody else. He'd say, you know, Americans, they're sometimes the most irascible people you ever met. He said, but they keep trying one thing and another, and sooner or later they find a solution. And in the end, they're going to do it. And you can bet damn well we're going to do it.
I couldn't agree more. Just like he said about our form of government, right? It's the worst on the planet except all the rest. We just keep trying. Tom, I'll tell you what, you've been so generous with your time. I'm going to collect the questions that we have from the audience. I've been given permission from Lydia to collect those, and I'll share those with you offline, and we can get answers back to people. I don't want to keep you much longer than we have. I get to wrap this thing up too. So I think, you've done enough public speaking over the course of your career to know that being the last to go or closing a program is widely regarded as the graveyard shift of public speaking, but I get to do it anyway. I just want to tell you how much I appreciate it. You and I have talked about this probably off and on for 20 years. And if I'm thankful for anything in 2020, it's that it did allow us to finally do this. And I just appreciate it. You really, a lot of people don't know about the good work you've done over the course of your career. You're certainly one of my heroes, and I think it is not an overstatement to say you've done as much to defend free enterprise over the course of your career as anybody I can think of over the last half century. And I just want to say thank you.
Well, thank you very much. I'm honored to come and do this. I'm looking forward when I can get out and travel around, but I'm never going to lose this system that would allow me and allow others in our industry to communicate more fully than we've been able to do before.
Well, and again, I mentioned earlier, no joke, I've got a weekly call with the U.S. Chamber that I normally would be on right now. In fact, during the zenith of the pandemic, we were meeting 3 times a week, excuse me. And so I know firsthand what the team at the U.S. Chamber has been up to, and it's really been remarkable. So I can't say thank you enough. I also want to say thanks to Gene and the team at Road Credit Union. I want to say thanks to Cow Creek for their season-long sponsorship, all the other sponsors that you saw at the top of the program for making this possible. Tom, I haven't been around for all 101 years of the Chambers Forum program, but a good percentage of them. I'm pushing close to 30% of those years. And something you said and Gene said, I just want to repeat in the form of a thanks. In a pandemic, throw on top of that a wildfire, just a catastrophic set of wildfires in our region. The public sector has risen to the challenge. They were the first responders right along with our other first responders, police and fire, to offer assistance, and they continue to do it. I just can't say thank you enough. Words don't describe what they've done for our community. So thanks to all those folks. I would just say before we sign off, for the most updated information, check with Jackson County's website, jacksoncounty.org, and continue to use our Chamber Southern Oregon Strong website and our Southern Oregon Strong Facebook group for up-to-date SBA information, FEMA information, PPP, PPE, et cetera, all those things. Tom, it's just great to see you. We've missed our CCC meetings, and I'm looking forward to doing those in person again too.
Yeah, you and me both. I'm really looking forward. Listen, you do a great job. You're a credit to your organization. More importantly, you're a credit to your community. You're a leader in this industry. What you learned from all of our guys, you spread around, and I really appreciate that. So feel free to call Neil this afternoon and ask him what they did. And
Yeah.
he'll tell you.
He's pretty good. Whenever I miss, I shoot him a text or an email, and as busy as that guy is, he gets right back to me. So tell those guys thanks too.
Okay, we will.
All right. Thanks to
Great.
everybody. Have a great October, and Tom, many thanks.
Thanks to you.
All right. Take care.
Thank you, everybody.
See you next month.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to it.